Welcome to Your Legislators, a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Your Legislators is a public service program providing our viewing and listening audiences in southern New Mexico the opportunity to hear about important legislative issues directly from their elected representatives in Santa Fe. Now here is your host, Jared Andersen.
Welcome to Your Legislators, also being broadcast on KRWG 90.7 FM, Las Cruces. I'm Jared Andersen, and with me today via satellite is State Senator Howie Morales, representing New Mexico's 28th District. State Senator Morales, thanks for being on the program today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and good morning.
All right, so you serve on the Senate Finance Committee, and I'm interested to get your take on the state's financial health.
You know, right now we're still awaiting, as we know, House Bill 2, which is the General Appropriation Act. That's actually still in the House. By law, that should be out already, and we should be reviewing it in the Senate side. I think that there's a little bit of concern there because of the issues that are being dealt with. The primary issues right now is trying to get a compromise on the film industry. The governor wants to come in and she wants to basically take $25 million from that and add that to the general revenues that we have, but there's been some difficulties there, so until we get it over in the Senate side, it really has been a stalled process. This was a concern to me from the beginning because I felt that on day one when we were told that there would be no options that would look how we can generate some revenue, and I'm not talking about increased taxes, I'm talking other ways that we can possibly bring in some revenue. And when that door was closed on the first day of the session, it really concerned me because I felt that we'd be running into the situation and the problems we're running into right now with the budget.
So you feel like the main hang-up right now is the issue with the film industry?
What it is right now is that there seems to be a lack of funds to be able to balance the budget on priorities that the governor wants and priorities that the legislature wants. So that $25 million that the governor is trying to seek, she's really saying that this has to be done in order to balance the budget. The legislature feels that if we don't have options to be able to discuss, then you're forced to cut. And some areas that are actually being looked at being cut is all across the board. Primarily, some of the governor's concerns are corrections, some education K-12 components, among other areas. But again, is without those revenues, we can't have a balanced budget. So there has to be some kind of compromise that comes over from the House side.
What do you think the solution is as far as where the cut should be made?
You know, that's why I was a really big proponent on the first day that we had to keep all options open. You know, in grade school and scientific method, you learn about the 4 steps of problem solving. What is the problem? What are the causes? What are all solutions? And then you come up with the best solution. When you go through and you eliminate parts of the possible all solutions, then that's what happens right here. So I think that it should have been a balanced approach. We should have a balanced approach as we come in to be able to address the budget. We need to increase some revenue somewhere. And we're increasing revenue somewhere. It could be anywhere from looking at some tax rollbacks that we did in 2003, or cutting out some of the corporate loopholes that really are an unfair business trade to our New Mexico small businesses. I thought that we could have generated between 50 and 70 million right there. But again, those were taken off the table, so we lost that balanced approach and we're forced to cut our way out of this. It's a real concern when we're having to cut our way out of this because we really affect those individuals who really are most vulnerable. I'm talking about individuals like our senior citizens, our veterans, our areas of education, not just K-12, but early childhood, as well as higher ed. And we talk about our individuals with disabled disabilities. Those individuals need the services, yet without a balanced approach, what we do is we make those programs at risk to being cut. And right now, those are on the chopping block.
You talked about tax rollbacks in 2003 and corporate loopholes. Can you go into a little bit more detail to give people an idea of what you mean by those two things?
Absolutely, and thank you for asking that. In 2003, there was some, you know, the state was doing well. We had some revenues that came in. We had great surpluses from the oil and gas industries. We were doing really well as a state. At that time, the legislature in 2003 came forward and they wanted to do some tax rollbacks, and it benefited individuals making $250,000 and above. And those tax rollbacks really were a very popular thing at the time. But that's when we had a lot of money. My thoughts is as you come forward and we're in a situation as the whole nation is, we need to look at areas that we can actually generate some revenues that wouldn't have an impact, the harsh impacts that we're going to see that's going to affect, again, the most vulnerable we should be able to at least discuss that without the threat of having those vetoed. But on day one, we were told any of those type of initiatives would be vetoed. On the corporate loopholes, this is an area that I think that really needs to be looked at. All it is, to me, is a fairness issue. It's an area that we can increase our revenues. Estimations could be from anywhere from $50 to $70 million that we can bring on a yearly basis to New Mexico. What this would require is currently we have small businesses. It may be a small family restaurant. It may be a small screen printing business in the state. They're a state-owned local business. They pay on average about 7.5% sales tax to the state and generates that. But you can have other businesses who are bigger corporations who maybe have chains that have their headquarters based outside of the state. Because their headquarters are based outside of the state, they don't pay that same 7.5 or 7.25 sales tax that the small New Mexico businesses do. And because of that, the state actually loses between $50 to $70 million in that range. Again, that money could go a long way to protect the most vulnerable services that we do provide in the state of New Mexico.
And this is not your first rodeo being in Santa Fe. You've been there a few years, and it's being reported that this year seems quote, odd, and it's moving slow. And it seems you're getting to the heart of some of the issues here, people trying to figure out what's going on with the budget and what can be done. Does it feel a lot different this year than in the last few years for you?
You know, I came in 2008. 2008 was my first session, and that was a tail end of when New Mexico still had the revenues. We had about a $350 million surplus when I came in January and February. It was a 30-day session. By that December, we were in a $300 million shortfall. That's how quickly that the economy had turned in New Mexico. And so I was able to see how behaviors took place when there was some money, and then the way it changed when the money was gone. This year has been a very odd session. It's been extremely slow in committees, been extremely slow on the floor. Yesterday was actually one of the first days that we actually got into some debates, heavy debates of some bills. But despite the slowness in those two areas, it's been the most busy session that I've had since being here in 2008. I think it's addressing constituent issues, trying to go through and find areas that we can benefit our local communities and the needs there. And it's really kept me busy. So it's been an opportunity to be able to focus on what our individual counties may need. But at the same time, is we're going to start picking up. My thought is because we've gone so slow throughout this first 30-some days that we're really going to pick up and we're going to have lengthy, long nights the rest of the way, just as we did last night.
Yeah, and a lot of people, you know, that you talk to feel anxiety, especially those that are wondering, you know, what's going to happen with cuts, because some cuts might affect them and their job. Do you anticipate it's going to all work out in the end and things are going to get done, or are you feeling anxiety too?
Well, you know, regardless, the budget has to be balanced. There's no way around it, and that's my concern. Is when you take off certain options that could really assist the people in New Mexico, and when you take those off, you're forced to balance the budget by really cutting services, and in a sense, could be cutting jobs and cutting the livelihood of people. And so that's an extreme concern to me. I'm not as so have anxiety that we're not going to balance the budget, because one way or another, the Finance Committee and the Senate, ultimately it'll end up in our hands, and we will find a way to balance it. Now, the governor still has the option to go through and do some vetoing. That could put us on an unbalanced budget, which ultimately would bring us back in a special session. The state just doesn't have the money to come back in a special session. So these are some of the concerns that we have right now. I personally would like to be able to open the door to look at these different options that we can generate some money. We're about $25 million off at this point. We can find that. We can balance the budget there, but let's not balance it on the people's backs of New Mexico. And that's been my concern from day one. I did ask the governor and met with the governor's staff earlier this session, and there was about $56 million of unused stimulus money. I felt that this unused stimulus money could go a long way in assisting and helping balance the budget. I do know that it is a one-time money. The money won't be available next year, but it's my hope. Just as last week we found that we're about $36 million over in our estimation. The economy's bouncing back. We're bouncing back, so I would really like that option to be able to use unused stimulus money at this time to help balance the budget and really protect our citizens of the state.
When you mentioned the unused stimulus funds, did you see some resistance there when you brought that up?
I saw some concern with the governor's office because, as you know, the stimulus money came in while Governor Richardson was still in office. Those stimulus funds were directly under the governor's discretion. So there's been basically, the monies have been committed, And to the Governor Martinez's staff's credit, they understand the monies have been committed. My research on that is saying that we can go through, we can actually cut many of those contracts because they're not meeting the need which was originally intended. I'll give you an example. We have an example of a program called Graduate New Mexico. Graduate New Mexico was given $10 million through the Public Education Department. The idea of this Graduate New Mexico was to be able to bring out students who had dropped out. Maybe they're 40, 50 years old, and try to bring them back in to get their GED. It was estimated that we were going to have 10,000 students or would-be students statewide enroll in this program. So the $10 million was given a one-time amount of $10 million. That program won't be around next year. My biggest concern is when I asked them, why are we doing a one-time program with one-time monies in this capacity? Why can't we use that money in other areas? Mm-hmm. I did some research on that, and PED told me there was about 950 students statewide who enrolled in that. I went through and contacted our local school districts. The number was actually 250 students. So initially it was thought that 10,000 students would be enrolled in this, so it would require the $10 million. Mm-hmm. 250 students does not require $10 million. We can move that money, cut the contract on the basis that we did not have the intended use of the program as it was originally wanted for. And because of that, I really feel that that's where we need to investigate all unused stimulus money, investigate all the contracts, and utilize this money right now to get us out of this recession that we've been facing.
All right, problem solved right there. There you go, right? Is it that easy?
It'd be nice. It'd be nice if it'd be that easy. I haven't heard back from the governor's office, but I'm confident that right now, as they're trying to find a way to future compromise, that they'll go back and look at this option. Again, this is a one-time opportunity that we can use that, but I'm really hoping that we are going to continue to rebound, and we will see the surpluses that we had seen back in 2008.
Okay, now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Optum Healthcare. And I guess, you know, they're in a finance committee talking right now. It's being looked at. Can you give people an idea of what's happening with Optum Healthcare?
Absolutely, and it's a major concern to me because I do work in a healthcare facility, and because of that, I am also very close to the areas where they provide services to our behavioral health population. The biggest concern by our providers is that they're not getting paid. There's a huge problem with the Optum contract that we have. This is a $1 billion contract that the state has out there, and it's not meeting the needs. I went to our Senate Finance Committee Chair, John Arthur Smith, and I requested, can we have a hearing with Optum, bring everybody to the table, bring providers, bring family members, bring Optum, bring CYFD, bring in Human Service Department, bring in the local collaboratives, and let's get this on the table and see what are the problems and what's occurring. This would give us the opportunity, what's happening in our committee as we speak right now. They're upstairs and they're discussing this, trying to find a way how we can resolve this issue. One of my biggest concerns with Optum, and when I go back up in a little, I will be asking this question, is many providers are up there, and it's a filled house up there in that committee room. One of my biggest concerns is many of the providers don't want to speak. They're scared of retaliation. And this should never be happening, especially with the $1 billion contract. And I think that when you hear it once, it's a concern. When you hear it twice, you start looking into it more. But when you hear it over and over by many providers, there's a problem. And the state of New Mexico should not be involved in a contract that is not serving the needs of who they're supposed to.
Okay, State Senator Morales, let's take a little pause here. For those listening on the radio, you're listening to KRWG 90.7 FM. And the show is Your Legislators, and our guest today is State Senator Howie Morales, representing New Mexico's 28th District. Now, State Senator Morales, when we talk about the Optum Health New Mexico issues, what is really, I guess, the problem? And give people a little background. They have a behavior health contract with the state, and what is the issue?
The issue right now basically is that Optum is not processing payments. So we have our providers who are providing the services to our individuals who require those behavioral health services. Optum's not coming through and not providing the funding for that. Even though the contracts have been submitted, they've been approved, the payments have been constantly delayed. What it's done is it's really had to put an impact on our providers. Our providers, many of them have had to close their doors. Many of them had to lay off individuals, and ultimately we're affecting those consumers who go in and need the services because those services are becoming less and less. And it really is a concern there because what we're seeing is that so much money and so much efforts are being placed to help these population, it's not being addressed right now. So we had a testimony from an individual in Espanola, a provider, and they provide services to adult and youth services. They're still waiting $275,000 to be paid to them. They cannot close their books and finish their audits for last fiscal year because they still have not received their funding. This is going on throughout the whole state, and this again is a huge concern.
So what can the state do? Can they just cut the funding to Optum, or what are the options on the table right now?
That was one of the discussions why I wanted to have this meeting with Optum, is because we were able to go through and find solutions. What are we going to do? Possibly the first thing that I'll recommend is that Optum meet with our providers, meet with our collaboratives, and try to find a solution to this. If that can be done, then I would move to possibly cutting the contract and finding a different way that we can address this, because that's too much money, $1 billion contract, to have a system that's not working, and it's affecting individuals who truly need the services.
But is that kind of a scary thing to cut the contract? Because then how could that affect people that depend on behavioral health services? What would happen there?
You know, there's other states who have gone through and had similar issues with different type of contracts like this, not necessarily with Optum, but with different types. What they did is they brought it back in-house, and they did it within the state. That's something that I like to explore, because what that would allow us to do is to really use that money, and we can put New Mexico people back to work. We can try to take care of and alleviate a lot of the problems of the procrastination with the payments. I think that this is something I'd like to look at. Ultimately, the best case scenario is to have Optum be able to address these issues, be able to correct where the problems are, and to pay our providers. That would be the best case scenario, since they already do have the contract. The problem is, since 2009, they've been saying that they're going to be fixing these problems, and we're yet to see these taking place.
So you're just sort of hoping to pressure them to do the right thing here, but we don't know what's going to happen yet.
Yeah, and that's why I think this committee hearing that we're having today is going to be so beneficial, because we can find really where are the problems, what's causing these problems, and to really address these in a professional and systematic way, that we come up with a resolution that benefits all individuals of New Mexico.
Now I want to switch gears again and talk about some of the bills that you introduced during this session. And I want to first talk about Senate Bill 221, the Art and Cultural Districts for Tribal Entities bill. What would this bill do if it was passed?
Basically what it is, it's a language cleanup bill. As we know, the state of New Mexico really benefits from the tourism that comes into the state from our arts and our cultural districts. In my area in Silver City and in Socorro, and as you know, down in Las Cruces, the arts and cultural districts have really become a component that really benefit the state. All this would do is to expand the definition and the language to have it open to our tribal entities as well. There's a lot of areas that they can benefit from, and so that's a very a small language cleanup bill, but it will go a long way, primarily because it does collaborate with the tourism department, our arts and cultural districts, as well as with our historical departments in the state that we can go through, and our cultural affairs department, I should say, and we go through and we collaborate with them, and they become one unit working together to promote New Mexico.
And this bill, it passed in the Senate, then what happened?
Right now we're waiting for the House to hear Senate bills, and so I assume that the House committees will be finishing up their bills pretty soon, and by next week I believe Senate bills will be heard in the House committees.
And another bill of yours that passed in the Senate was Bill 513, excuse me, I'm sorry. It was a bill that is called the Western New Mexico Founders Day bill. What is that bill all about?
What it was basically a memorial that was recognizing Western on its 118th birthday. And New Mexico Highlands and Western 118 years ago basically were recognized as a normal school of the state of New Mexico. Obviously, the Western New Mexico has gone into a teaching school and now the university as we know it. And it was just an opportunity to celebrate and to go through and celebrate that 118th birthday, primarily because this is going to be a pivotal year at Western New Mexico, because Dr. John Counts, who's been there since 1993, he will be retiring this year. So this was a good opportunity to have Western recognized on the Senate floor and the festivities going on back on the campus. And it was just an opportunity again to bring recognition to the university and to the community that Western does serve.
And Western is dear to your heart. Can you tell people why?
Excuse me?
Western is dear to your heart. Can you tell people why?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, growing up on the campus, running around, playing there, it's always been a part of my life. Been fortunate enough to stay at home, get my education with my bachelor's and my master's there at Western. It is an institution that I hold very close to me. I see the benefit that it provides for our local students and the jobs that it provides for our community. Western is an institution that has come through many adversities and had many triumphs, and I really am appreciative of all the work that it does for people of Southwest New Mexico.
And what did you study when you were at Western?
I went through my bachelor's program. I received a teaching degree, and it was in biology and a dual emphasis with special education. And onto my master's degree was an interdisciplinary study in special education. So it really gave me that foundation on the education component. And ultimately, when I went on and did teach for 10 years on that teaching certificate that I earned at Western.
So how did you get involved with politics then?
I always knew there was going to be an interest there, and I always knew that this was something that I was going to continue to move forward on. Primarily, the turning point for me was in 2001. I enrolled in New Mexico State, got into the New Mexico State doctorate program in the field of education. I saw many changes coming into education with No Child Left Behind, and it was a grave concern to me because these changes were really going to hamper education, as we've seen that's taking place right now. We've overloaded teachers with paperwork. We've overloaded schools with trying to make accountability of AYP, the adequate yearly progress. And what we've done is we've shifted the focus, and no blame to the teachers, administrators, or the districts, but the shift has been taken from the focus of the student to the focus of how we're going to perform on a test. I saw this taking place in 2001. I knew at the teaching level it'd be difficult to make these changes. It was going to have to come at the political and the legislative level, and so I started making the preparation for that. In 2005, Grant County did bless me and enough to elect me as Grant County Clerk. This gave me the opportunity to work with our youth, to utilize technology skills, and to be able to get on the path in the political process. I did not know Senator Altamirano was going to unfortunately pass away in 2007, and when that happened, the Grant County Commission, Catron County Commission, and Socorro County Commission gave me their nomination to be appointed as New Mexico State Senator. So that's where I've been since 2008, and it's been a wonderful learning experience, but at the same time, there was no honeymoon stage. When I came in, as I said, there was the tail end of the money, and we were right in the frying pan. There was no longer money the rest of the session. So it's been a great opportunity and a blessing in disguise in this financial stressful times that we're facing.
With your education background, what are some of the bills being talked about in Santa Fe this year that you are really supportive as far as education goes?
I sit on the Legislative Education Study Committee over the interim, and in the summertime I'm listening to some bills. There's some bills that, as we know, we have a new Secretary Designee of Education. There's some things that are being discussed, and anywhere from grading our students, our teachers, and accountability measures, trying to find some measures there, to our schools from A through F, giving them a letter grade, to holding back third graders or fifth graders. So these are some initiatives that are being moved forward. The idea is New Mexico's been ranked towards the 47th through 49th consistently in education. There needs to be changes. The concern I have, and quite honestly, I have not seen those bills because they haven't reached our Finance Committee at this time, but those bills that I have on the surface, some of those concerns is I don't know if they're really strategically thought out and the impact that it's going to have on our teachers, on our schools, and most importantly on our students. So I'm waiting to see some of those discussions and the debates. I can tell you that I have some good ideas that I think really would work, that would provide some accountability and really increase our opportunity for achievement. But when we talk about education, one of the arguments I make is that education is early childhood, K-12, and higher ed. And with that, we have the component of our adult basic education services. To me, that's all education. You can't go through and just single one out and leave the rest out to take the cuts. So that's been the balancing act that we've been trying to really reach. It's been difficult, though, as we discuss our topics with education, because there's so many issues that we want to go through and find solutions, but it really does have to be a strategic process to do that. I also come from a coaching background. I've had the opportunity to spend many years coaching, and I see what takes place in that area, how you can get the most achievement and the most out of those individuals that you're working with. The same applies in the classroom, and I think a lot of the same kind of techniques that are used and a lot of the same kind of creativity could work in the classroom. And I'm hoping that as these bills come forward that I can have some of that discussion and possibly put some amendments that would really assist to help us get the achievement that we need in education.
So would you support the bill to extend the amount of days that our students go to school here in New Mexico?
I believe that there was a bill in 2009 that was to extend the amount of days to 180. And basically what was going to happen right there, it was a concern to me on that, just because financially it's about $12 million a day. And financially, we just don't have the budget right now to be able to do that. So as far as increasing the amount of days, I think that's something we need to discuss. But more importantly, what I'd like to be able to discuss, and I shared this with the new Secretary of Education designee, I shared it that what we got to do is there's got to be more preparation done. I really believe teachers need to get paid more. It's a difficult job. Being outside the classroom makes me really treasure the amount of work that the teachers do, because it's tough. There's times you can't even get a bathroom break. You have to stay in your classroom, and people may not realize that. I do believe that there needs to be higher pay, but along with that, there needs to be opportunity for more preparation. What I'm saying is that maybe we go to school till May, then you take maybe 2 weeks off, then the rest of the time is teacher preparation with other teachers in the building, with the administrator being held accountable. This would allow the opportunity to prepare, so to speak, in the off season. And when I'm talking in the off season, our students don't come until August. Well, we can prepare that in middle June and July for everything that needs to be taking place for the school year. We don't wait till the beginning of the year. And most teachers that are successful, they don't wait either. They're in there, they're doing their job in the classroom over the summer, and they're preparing, and the results show that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, sorry. We are about out of time, so State Senator Morales, thanks so much for being here today. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks a lot for being here again.
Thank you, and thank you for helping us get the word out to our constituents.
All right, thanks.
Copyright New Mexico State University Board of Regents.